welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today I'm going to be continuing on with my comparisons of the Atari versus the Intellivision, and this time I'm going to be looking at some Activision games because, well, Activision games on the Atari were usually some of the better titles on the Atari. Most game lists, if you look at like the best games of the Atari, a lot of them will be Activision. Activision and probably a Magic are, two of the better known titles, for making games. But anyways, yeah, so what I thought of, since some of the great games from the Atari found their way on the Intellivision, let's do a comparison and see how they are. Now, I do I have played the Pitfall on both of these systems before. I do have it on the Intellivision, but, and it's probably more well known on the Atari than it is on the Intellivision, for Pitfall anyways. And funny enough, when I was a kid, I didn't play it on the Atari. I actually did play it on the Intellivision. I borrowed it from a neighbor all the time. They had it for their Intellivision. I used to borrow it off them all the time just so I could play Pitfall. Anyways, let's get to the comparison and see. So I'm going to start off with the Atari 2600, the most classic version of the game Pitfall. Okay, so we got the game booted up, and yeah, I mean it's nice and simple. It starts off with with the opening, the first part of the game. No real title. A lot of the Activision games kind of started this way. They didn't have much of a title screen. They had the little Activision thing down there at the bottom, but really just starts off on the home screen essentially. And that's probably due to programming because of trying to keep the game small on these small cartridges. And I know with Pitfall, it was one of those games where the programmer had to kind of rebuild the game from scratch almost because it wasn't going to fit on the little the 4K RAM cartridges that he had to. Of course, that programmer is David Crane, who did a lot of great stuff on the Atari and a lot of other systems as well. I believe he even made the Ghostbusters game on the Commodore 64, which is one of my most favorite games on the Commodore 64. Well, one of them, anyways. But as you can see, I mean, a lot of people know Pitfall. They've played Pitfall, especially if you have an Atari. If you grew up with an Atari, you probably had this game. This was one of those games where I think when people saw the advertising for it, they knew they were going to have this game. And a lot of people are familiar with the old commercial with the young Jack Black, the actor Jack Black, being on that commercial, wearing his safari hat. There's lots of clips of that online, and you could probably even see the commercial on YouTube, where people actually were, posting it. Kind of neat to see, one of his first few things on TV was doing a Pitfall commercial for Atari. But I mean, yeah, this game must have blown a lot of people away. I mean, it's for what it is, for the type of, platforming style of game it is, to come out on the Atari, pretty amazing stuff. Now, you do have an option about also going down here. I'm actually supposed to use the ladder, and these things are always a pain to jump over. But the problem with going down is you don't know where the dang wall is unless you've mapped this place out. See, I got lucky here. I didn't hit a wall. But sometimes, if you take the wrong underground path, you're going to hit a wall. Which means you're going to have to backtrack. In this game, it doesn't end, like, there's no actual proper ending, like, you don't complete the game. You just have a timer up there, and when that timer stops, the game stops. Whoa, I just got eaten by an alligator thing. But yeah, I mean, so it's really a race against the clock to try and get the most amount of points, and then the game stops. Like, there's no actual completion, like you find something or save a princess or anything like that. It's just simply you're against the clock. And of course, a lot of Atari games were like that back then, and some people really like that. I mean, it's a challenge, and I've seen people where videos of people who say they literally mapped the whole game out and they found the best route possible. to get the best score. And I think there is a score. I can't remember. I remember learning about it a while ago, but there is a top score where somebody, got like perfect game, where you don't get hit by anything. You take the right path, and you just move, and it's like the highest possible score you can get, kind of thing. So it does kind of have its limits. But as you can see, I mean, the game pretty much goes like this through most of it. You just scroll until eventually you hit that home screen that you started on, and then it just keeps looping. Logs. I think is this the home screen? Looks like the home screen. And then you just, maybe it wasn't. You just kind of just keep going through. There is a certain number of screens, and then just keeps going. But otherwise, I mean, the game is fun. The character is very fluid. The graphics look great. I mean, it's just one of the best games you can get on the Atari. And the good thing about this game is it's fairly easy to pick up. I mean, there was a lot of copies made. It wasn't, it's not expensive. Pitfall 2, on the other hand, a little bit more rare title and costs a little bit more money, but well worth the pickup if you can get one. Okay, so now we got the Intellivision version up and running. So this is Activision Presents Pitfall. Now they've given it the typical Intellivision screen. If you've played Intellivision, you'll know this screen very well. A lot of their main titles, a lot of the Mattel titles, all have this same title screen. But some of the Coleco games, they decided to make their own titles. And then some of the later games started having different titles. But this was your pretty standard title. Copyright 1982, Activision. So let's start the game. There we go. Okay, so you can see that the game, I mean, starts and looks similar. It's a little bit, I mean, the running of the guy looks a little bit different. Things look a little bit wider, bigger, like that log thing looks a little bit bigger. The wall looks a little bit different. But other than that, and the colors are a little bit different. And obviously that sound, it's the same sound, but different, different sound chip. The swinging of the rope looks a little bit weird, though. It almost looks like it's coming like this instead of just pivoting like the other one, the other game. I have to run this. Run, little man. And the other thing I'm noticing, and I don't know if, I think this is because of the way they decided to do it. That fire looks a little bit weird. It looks like it's one button to jump and another button to get off the rope. Whereas on the Atari version, it was, one button to do everything. I mean, that's not a big deal. I mean, the Intellivision had multiple buttons, so why not utilize them? I mean, otherwise, everything seems like it's the same. Like, you almost don't even notice the difference. It's got the one up there to save my life. How many lives I have left, I should say. Makes a lot of the same sounds. I mean, they pretty much ported it and emulated it, or made it look just like the Atari version. They didn't really go out of their way to try and, make it look different or try and add too much of an Intellivision feel to it, outside of just, the way the graphics are laid out, how wide things look. The colors seem a little bit more washed, I would think. And of course, the swinging of that rope looks a little different to me. Seems a little bit different. And we got the money. Oh, ran into the bog. Let's go down there and see how it is jumping over those scorpion things. Ah! See, I keep pushing the jump button to try and jump off the rope, and it's not the right button. I'm gonna have to try that again. Let's take the, let's go down. And try and jump this thing. Well, it wasn't too bad. Sometimes that jumping those things, you gotta be pixel perfect. The snake looks exactly the same, though. I think so. It looks very similar. I mean, otherwise, this is just as playable. Of course, like I say in a lot of these comparisons, controller is the big issue. This game probably is much better played on an Atari joystick or regular plain joystick than it is on the Intellivision disc controller. Just for many reasons. I actually think a lot of the arcade style games are better off with a joystick, or well, especially the platforms, I should say, not the arcade style, but the platform games, like Donkey Kong and stuff, are probably a lot better with a joystick than a disc controller, because you're not really going to utilize the disc aspect of it, other than just going left or right. Just got eaten by a. Let's go. But other than that, I mean, this plays and looks. You almost barely know the difference. Still a fun game. Yeah, so, I mean, that was it. Both of the games are almost the same, and that's good. It's good that they didn't try and, overdo it on the Intellivision version, maybe just because, sometimes the graphics on the Intellivision can really outweigh the graphics on the Atari for some of the older games, for sure. Like the Atari nowadays, when we get these homebrew games, some of them are quite fantastic, what they can do with the Atari. But back then, in the 80s, a lot of it was programming constraints to fit onto these small cartridges that they were allotted. Like they were told they couldn't use the 8K or whatever. They had to use the 4, and so like I said, David Crane, and I saw this because he did there was a YouTube something on YouTube where David Crane was talking at a video game convention, and he was talking about how he made Pitfall, and he said that the biggest challenge was to fit it, to get it to fit, and so things like title screen couldn't happen, and he mentioned that he was able to make the game, but then he had to like cut it down to fit onto the cartridge. I don't think that was the case really with the Intellivision, but the thing is, with the Intellivision version, really what they did was they just looked at the Coleco version and said, let's, the Activision version, and let's make it, reminiscent of that. And kind of like I just was saying there with Coleco, it's a shame they couldn't do the same. Like Coleco tended to really make their games different than what you saw on the Atari. I honestly think both of them are great. It really just comes down to which system you prefer at this point. Either game, I don't think that the Intellivision one outshines the Atari one at all, and I definitely don't think that there's no reason not to play the Intellivision version. If you're an Intellivision fan, or if you only have an Intellivision, you're obviously only going to play that one. But if you have both, I think they're both worth giving a shot. I mean, Pitfall was also ported onto like other computers and stuff like that, so there's a lot of options out there. Anyways, let me know what you think of the two versions. I think they're almost the same. I mean, outside of using an Atari controller versus an Intellivision controller. Other than that, I wouldn't say there's much difference. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Leave some comments down below. Hope you subscribe. Talk to you later.